Have you ever wondered how energy healers and intuitive coaches get their gifts? Or what it's like when they meet someone for the first time? Can they read their thoughts instantly, and is that a blessing or a curse? Being able to see what people keep behind closed doors. And what is an energy healer, and how does it work, and how can they help you? If these questions sparked your interest like they did me, then stick with me to find out. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Simon Osimo, and on my channel, I interview people who share stories that will educate, inform, and inspire you to live a life of significance. Today, I'm talking with Joe Petroski, the founder of Profound Power. Now, Joe is an energy healer, intuitive coach, and I wouldn't say I was skeptical going into this conversation, but I was unsure of the concept of where his gifts actually came from. But we're going to dive into Joe's story. How in 1999, when being told by doctors he was going to die, he sought alternative medicine, which led him to understand what he knew had already been there, his intuitive ability to read people. But before we get into the content, if you get value today, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be told every time I release a new and inspiring video. So let's dive into this week's conversation with Joe Petroski on what I've titled, How to Improve Your Life with Energy Healing. Well, Joe Petroski, welcome to the Who I Became podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward to this.
And Joe, it's a real honor and a privilege to talk to you. I know that you've spoken to a few people in my family, and you are a sort of an energy healer, intuitive healer. And in my life, I wouldn't say that I was skeptical of you, Joe, but a few people have mentioned who you were, and I was thinking, who is this guy that can sort of heal through the mind and energy and stuff? So it is great to learn more about you, get to know you, and even myself, as I've learned more, I've become maybe not less skeptical, but as a follower of Christ, it's easy to understand now where you come from. So really grateful that you're going to join me and talk through this conversation about energy healing and your sort of intuitive skills that you've been gifted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I grew up as normal and as regular as possible. Everybody around me was like June and Ward Cleaver. We were all just regular normal. I was raised Catholic. I had no idea that I had these gifts. In fact, anything that I thought or felt as a child was highly discouraged. I learned to not be seen, not be heard. And I learned to hide in plain sight. And in my 30s, I ended up developing a very unusual illness, and I had seen a lot of doctors all over the United States with this illness. And there was two doctors I was working with at the end. And after working with them for a number of years, I was on oxygen for almost 2. And they came to me and they said, Joe, we have one more treatment that we could give you, but if it doesn't work, it will kill you. So we have to send you home, and you have to be prepared to die. It's going to be a very painful death. You have less than a year to live, and it's going to get worse. And I was already emaciated. I was so sick. What would happen is I would breathe every day regular chemicals. I would lose my vision. I could still see, but I couldn't tell you what I saw. For example, I'd be able to tell you that there's red behind you, but being that you and I hadn't really seen each other, I don't know that I could say that you're a human being. I certainly wouldn't be able to say that was a microphone in front of you. So the illness was very scary. But I went and I met this 35th generation Shaolin master, which is a Chinese healer. And I went to him and his students, and after the second hour, I no longer needed the oxygen. And after the third, I was completely healthy. And he looked at me and he said, well, you can do this too. And I looked at him like, you're nuts. And I hope I stay healthy. But I trained with him. When I saw his sincerity, I did. I trained with him for over 3.5 years. And during that time, I had the wonderful opportunity to sit with Native Americans as well. And the Chinese way of healing was very rudimentary. There was a lot of charts and graphs and things. Kinesiology was involved, different things like that. When I sat with the natives, they just felt. And there was an elder there that I sat with. And as I sat with him, he started to see and feel. And I didn't know I was an empath. I didn't know I was a psychic or an intuitive. But as I sat with him, I started to see and feel everything that he saw and felt. I could see the history of the land. I could see where the rocks were buried. I could see all kinds of things. And that's also when the people that had passed away started to show up. So I didn't know that I had these healing gifts growing up. but now I do. And people ask, what's it like? And things like that. And you talk about the skeptic and what is it, that kind of stuff. There's a movie that was real popular in the early 2000s called What the Bleep Do We Know? And it's about quantum physics. And in quantum physics, they call me the observer. And they realize that as in an experiment, you cannot observe it without changing it. And at the end of this long movie, Dr. Wolf is sitting there or standing there, and he says, now, if you are not thoroughly confused, you were not paying attention. And so that's one of the brightest minds in physics explaining energy and energy healing. So I'm used to people wondering, I'm used to people doubting. But before the American doctors, before the American Medical Association came in, people like me were the regular. That was the usual. You would go to your tribal healer. You would go to the clan healer. People like me and the herbalists were regular. But when the American Medical Association came in, they've had some incredible marketing campaigns to make them the only experts on the scene. And I work with doctors. Some doctors are fantastic and will love working with me. And that's great when we can combine our efforts. And some, see me as a threat, but I don't worry about it. I just know that I can look at a client. I always see their highest good. I can always see their highest talents, and I can see the blocks that they have as well. And I don't care what their diagnosis is. I just ask them, what are the symptoms that you're having? And as they start to discuss the symptoms, I can see what's going on in their body. And as I pay attention to it, their body changes. So it's very simple work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of patience, and a lot of I have to be very, very neutral. I can't get bothered by what it is that I see, but it's fantastic the results.
Yeah, and it's funny. I know when we spoke on the phone doing research for this conversation, I came off thinking, "Oh wow, I wonder what Joe makes of me. What's he seen in me and stuff?" So there must be those type of feelings that people have when they interact with you. But I want to take you back a second, Joe, just about you mentioned in 1999. When a doctor's basically said, you're going home to die, you've got this sort of rare illness, there's various different medical issues that you're having. What made you sort of seek out an alternative sort of path, perhaps? Because, if the doctors had either written you off and said, go home to die, what made you seek an alternative to say, is there another answer to my health conditions?
I just simply wasn't ready to die. I was only in my 30s, for crying out loud. I had one daughter at the time, and I didn't want to die. I just had this feeling that it wasn't my time. And I actually, was kind of, when I say belligerent, I don't know if that's the right word, because I wasn't mean or angry at people, but I was just like, it's like, you're crazy. You're nuts. You don't know me. Even though they had nearly an inch and a half of, medical evidence, medical tests proving that I was dying and proving that my body was killing itself, I just refused to believe it. And when I went to the Social Security hearing, because I was on disability for 3.5 years, when I went there, the Social Security psychologist showed up, and the judge said, you don't need to be here, so you must have something important to say. I'll let you go first. And the psychologist said, he says, well, he's very honest, maybe too honest. And he's very diligent, but, But he says, Your Honor, he says, I'm here because Mr. Petroski has the absolute unrealistic belief and even expectation that he's going to live. He's got this unrealistic belief. And then he turns to me and he says, Mr. Petroski, you are going to die. It's going to be very, very soon. It's going to be a horrible death. And you may end up taking your own life because it's going to get that bad. You have to come to peace with that.
Well, that's a positive person then, Joe. Let's invite him over for Christmas. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Tell me a ticket and give me the popcorn.
That's right, yeah. And so I guess, so you are, you've gone on, and we'll talk a bit more about your company and how you help people, but you are a sort of master energy healer, intuitive life coach, Profound Power is the company that you started. So maybe give the listeners a sort of an overview as to what is an energy healer and what is an intuitive coach. What does that actually mean for the layman who might not understand or be new to those terms?
Well, energy healing is a lot of things, and it's kind of like food. The food's a lot of things. There's Taco Bell, and then there's Ruth Chris and Seasons 52 and gourmet restaurants. And energy healing has that whole gamut as well. There's a lot of energy healers out there that are kind of interesting, and they do more surfing on energy but the work that I do, I can actually look at people, and as I work with them, usually in 1 or 2 sessions, we can eliminate complete issues. Like, for example, I worked with a fellow that played NFL professional football for 12 years, and he was retired, and he was in pain for 34 years. And every single week he went to a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, and a massage therapist just to be able to keep up with life because he was in so much pain. Well, I worked with John, and after the 3rd session, he had 100% range of motion and 0 pain. And he had already had 4 surgeries. And like I say, he was going through all those other cares and nothing worked. Well, 3 sessions, he was completely free of pain. So the work that I do is really profound. And I've let my clients name my companies. And that's what they've called, is that it's really profound. It gives them a profound physical healing, emotional healing, and spiritual healing. It's very, very, it's cool.
Yeah, and I know when you spoke, when me and you spoke a couple of weeks ago, it started off being as in, the doctors say that I've got an illness that can't be cured, or there's a treatment which is, they prescribe this medication. And it started off being very physical for you in how you'd heal people, but it's also moved into sort of more sort of psychological and understanding and purpose and fulfillment in life. Maybe sort of share a little bit about how the model shifted from just healing people's bodies to also healing their souls as well.
Sure. Well, and just to be really clear too, I'm governed by a lot of laws, and so I can't even mention psychological, for example.
Okay, this is your disclaimer for what I said.
Yeah,
I like it. Okay,
this is my disclaimer. And so I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a licensed healthcare professional. I am a licensed massage therapist, so I can touch clients. But use your doctors. Go to your professionals to get your psychological advice and your medical advice. But when I started to work with people, what ended up happening is I was able to eliminate physical issues. But during that time, I started to see all kinds of things about them. And I could see some of the things that were holding them back. And then I could see the things that they needed to change in their life in order to be able to do better. And that's one of the things people ask me about my teacher. Well, my teacher, after working with him 3.5 years solid, another 2 years on and off, he took me aside and he says, "Hey, Joe," he says, "you get to go teach what you're doing because you're doing differently than I taught you. You got to go out and teach what you're doing." Because when I work with a client, I do a lot of talking, and my clients have been begging me to coach them, and I didn't feel qualified. But in 2012, I saw the movie The Cure Is. And when I watched that movie, the first time I watched it, I feverishly wrote for 10 pages, and the next for 8, and the next time I wrote for 2 pages. And at the end of that, I had my first coaching program. And so in 2012, I started to coach clients, and I've loved it. Every single person that's ever gone through the coaching has just loved it. They thought it's fantastic. And it gives them the highest sense of self-appreciation and self-acceptance and self-love that they've ever felt. It's helped them in their careers. It's helped them in their relationship. It's helped them in their finances. The shifts are absolutely astounding. And I love it. And what I do is when I see people, you would ask, it's like, "Oh God, what's he seeing? What's he seeing?" I don't look. I don't look. If I wanted
Come on,
to,
you must.
The only time that I do is when I'm called into a room to help the room. And for example, people often will invite me to their house, their place of work, or their community center, and they'll say, "Joe, I want you to talk about energy healing." In fact, Shannon had done this at her aunt's community center in Edina. And there was 52 people there. Well, they all came to hear me talk about energy healing. They wanted to find out what they could do to instantly increase their energy, increase their physical strength, emotional strength, and spiritual strength. Well, when I go into a room like that, then I'll start to look, because everybody's there for the help. But even the one, if I wanted to, when I go into detention centers or treatment centers, I read every single person there. Okay. And I tell every single person there, this is the absolute best thing about you, and this is what you need to work on, because that's what I'm hired to do. And so, but if I go into a party, for example, and I do that, say there's a party of 18 people in a backyard barbecue or something like that. If I go in there and read everybody, what it's going to be like is it's going to be 18 radio stations, all at the level of 7 or 8. Okay. If the volume goes from up to 10, the level is going to be about 7 or 8. So it's just like,
Yeah.
And it would drive me nuts. It would really drive me nuts. And when I was learning, originally, that's what would happen. But I had to go through a lot of training in order to be able to turn it off. And so now I can go places and I tell people, it's like, sure, I'll go into a party, I'll walk down the street. And you guys, everybody knows that you go to a party or you go to a business thing, and there's going to be that 1 or 2 people that always complain about everything. Life sucks, blah, 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 blah.
Sounds like you're a social security person at your hearing.
But I am. I mean, that's the thing. And that's one of the things with the coaching is I cut through the bull right away.
Yeah.
Nobody can pull the wool over my eyes. I see exactly what's going on. And
well, maybe let's go back to this, Joe. So maybe the question is, what do you see? What do you hear and what do you feel when you meet someone? And maybe talk us through it. Have you found a way to articulate what you feel, what you see, and what you hear when you first meet someone?
Well, if I meet somebody at a party, I try and basically just meet Simon, just the person that's in front of me, that's the husband of, Courtney,
Yep.
That's who I meet. If you hire me to look at you, I will see the things that bother you. I will see the things that upset you. I will see the things that, just occupy your mind, because you're somebody that really holds things and kind of ruminates over them.
Are you talking about me now, Joe, or is this just hypothetical? Just checking.
This is you. This is you.
Oh, it's me. Okay, yeah. So I wasn't too sure about it. I was thinking it's a free session.
Yeah, so it's something where you can take a thought and you can kind of just ruminate on it, and you kind of get stuck on it, and it actually makes you kind of sorrow in the gut, and it kind of makes you bothered. Okay, so I can see that. So I would work with you to be able to help you get past that. I can also see.
Well, let's keep this podcast going for 3 hours, and you can work with me then for a free session, because you have just nailed it. So you show me you've got the skills. I like it.
Yeah. Well, and it's also something. You have to have fun. Okay. You have to have, crack me up, joyous fun. You also have to do something physical to really kind of stretch yourself. If you don't work out, if you don't go chop some wood or go for a run, or go snowshoeing or something like that, if you don't do that, your physical body is going to get kind of putrid and upset. Okay. So you carry distinct energy in your body. Your body's either going to be happy, hey, or your body's going to be basically like, like that. Yeah. And so it's something for you. You need to be able to have that joyous fun, and you need to be able to have that physical outlet. And the physical outlet, you have to do it together. So it's kind of like, taking the family and doing it, taking, the kids or taking Courtney. If you don't, you become kind of isolated in your own kind of creature. Let's talk about someone else, Joe. It's scaring me too.
I don't want to give too much away to my listeners that I'm a complete nutter. So, but it is great stuff. I jest for you. And it's good because it ties into one of the stories that you told me about this retired NFL player that you worked with, where his family noticed a change in him. It wasn't just, he came to you because his chiropractor said, there's nothing I can do. You're just bodies, 15 years of playing football, but you also sort of helped him in a more of a sort of spiritual way. Do you mind sort of sharing that story about what his family said?
Sure. And this is stuff that he's talked to me about, and is, and it's everything that he's given me okay to talk about in a testimonial. So first of all, John was, free of pain, but then what ended up happening is John's sons called their mother, John's ex-wife, and they said, "Hey, Mom, what's up? Who's this Joe character?" And she was like, "Well, why?" And it's just like, well, Dad's really kind of happy and he's really kind of sound, and is it going to last? Because they've gone through that. Their father had gone through treatment a couple times and it would stay, but then it would go away. And they asked, it's like, "Mom, is this really going to last?" And she said, "Yeah, it's going to." And what ended up happening is he repaired his relationship with his ex-wife. And because they had a lot of things that had happened. And then he repaired and rebuilt his relationships with his 2 sons, and had fantastic times. And the boys who were in their 40s, they just loved it. They said, "This is amazing to have Dad like this. This is awesome." And that's one of the things. We're all energy, and the thing that's in us is that light. Okay, whether it's whether you call it God, creator, source, whatever, that universal light is in every single one of us. And if we're in physical pain, emotional pain, or spiritual pain, we're not going to thrive. We're always going to be held back. We're not going to be able to live the way we want to live. And when we're free of that, when our energy is really working, we're going to be amazing. And I use words like that in my business all the time. And then also with my arms up in the air. I believe that we need to be able to celebrate like that. We need to be able to say, yes, my life rocks. Because if we don't, why are we here? God didn't make us to be average or mediocre or blah, blah. And it's my belief that we really get to celebrate life, that we're supposed to really enjoy it. And that's why I love the work that I do.
Yeah, and another amazing story you told me was about a young girl, I believe she was 6 years old, where her sort of parents had come to you. I think she was dying of cancer. They'd come to you for help and support, and maybe share that story as to what that young girl said to you, because that really shows that there is not only strong energy amongst us, it can come in the most unusual and young children as well. You don't have to have sort of be mature in age to have that level of depth. Maybe share that story, Joe.
Sure. Yeah. Isabella came in, and this is something where people, talk about the energy healing, what it's like. I have to be incredibly neutral. I can't let things bother me. If things bother me, I'm not going to be able to be good or effective. Well, Isabella came in, and her head was as big as a pumpkin. It was huge from the treatments of cancer and the steroids that they were giving her, and the pain meds that they were giving her. And she came in with this ginormous head on this little 6-year-old girl, this tiny little girl. And so we were sitting there, and we did the stuff, taking the notes and getting some of the history. And then she goes, Dad, didn't you have to go to the bathroom? And she's like, oh yeah, that's right, I was going to go to the bathroom. And so she had encouraged her dad to go to the bathroom. And she looks at me and she goes, you do know that you're here to help my parents, that you're not going to be able to help me, right? And I looked at her and I was just like, yeah, I mean, I knew that, but it wasn't clear until she sat down. I realized I was looking at her father, and all of the sessions were going to be about her father and her mother, and the healing for those two. And that was amazing. And you talk about kind of an angel being in a human body. She was it.
Yeah, and I know when you told me that story for the first time, I got goosebumps coming down my arms, and it is to hear a 6-year-old that is not only dying but prepared to face death, and know that actually you as a healer are there for her parents and not her. I mean, it's a powerful story. It can only sort of impact you, where it really makes you stop and think as to what is the meaning of your life and stuff. I guess let's maybe share a little bit, Joe, about, we know you had your illness in 1999, where a doctor said, hey, you're going home to die. We've done all we can. And you sought this ulterior way, because you knew it wasn't your time to die. You didn't want to die then. Do you think this is a skill or a gift that you've always had throughout your life? Or is this something that sort of came upon you during your life? How would you try, and when you've looked back and reflected, do you feel you were born with the skills, or has it sort of been learned and developed for a lot of these Native Americans that you worked with?
I believe that I was born with it, but like I had said earlier, I grew up with a lot of abuse. I was beat a lot. I was beat often, sometimes multiple times a day. And my dad was as big as me. And my dad chose boards, and I went to Catholic school, and I got, an incredible, lot of beatings there as well. And so I learned the less I said, the less I showed up, the better. And I learned to hide in plain sight. I could be in the living room and just be still and nobody'd see me. However, I did have a lot of things where I was bothered by certain people. And I was really uncomfortable around certain people, and I didn't want to shake their hands, or I wanted to step back, or things like that. And come to find out, that they were, criminals, or they were cheating on their, wife, who was a friend of my mom's, things like that. And then I did have some dreams that came true as well as I was growing up, but I didn't know it. I shut me down. And I was very socially awkward. I didn't talk. I didn't interact with people. But when I had this illness and when I went, with the healing, my teacher picked me out of a group of 150 and he says, you can do this. And he didn't tell anybody that at all. And people said, he hasn't said that to people in a long time. So he picked me up. And then when the Native American, we were there and we were project orientated. We were all working on stuff. And this, old guy comes and grabs me and he says, let's go sit down. And I'm just like, well, we got to work. There's work to be done. Let's just sit down. And so he and I sat and I started to talk. He said, no, let's just sit. Let's just sit. So I sat for another 15 or 20 minutes and I started to talk. No, let's just sit. Let's just sit. And I realized, oh, okay, he wants me to just sit. Well, and that's when he opened up and he started to look. And I could see that there was this 20-foot boulder that was in the middle of the land. And that's why they didn't put the house in the most beautiful spot, because the boulder was there. I could see all these different things. And so everybody that was around me that could do energy healing saw in me that I had this gift, and I didn't know it. But when I saw it and I started to really embrace it, I quickly became one of the best healers and one of the best teachers that my teacher had ever had. And he, put me up through the system quite quickly. And the Native American had me do all kinds of things. Brought me to ceremonies, blessings for people, healings for people. I'd show up and there was a carload of people. It's like, okay, go to work. So they could see that I had this gift way before I did, way before I knew it.
Yeah. And for, I look back of, in my own life as to where I've come from. And I would say that, there's always times where you reflect and sort of, you might be a bit down or low. But I would describe myself as a positive person where one of my character defects, I'm sure you see it, Joe, because you look at me like I'm a pane of glass, I'm sure, is that if you set me a goal, I achieve that goal, where's the next one? While I'm halfway through one, I'm driving, I'm always driving. It's definitely one of my character defects, but I've always been incredibly positive. I'm only limited by my own imagination. But I was wondering, are there people that you can't help through your skills of energy healing? Do you have to be positive in nature? Do you have to believe? Maybe share a little bit of sort of context surrounding the type of people that you can help.
Sure. Well, that's one of the reasons where I offer a complimentary consultation, because I want to be able to look at people and I want to be able to see, really, can I really, really help them? And I ask a couple of questions. Is it in my highest good to help them? Is it in their highest good for me to help them? And I ask those questions because I don't want to waste their time, and I certainly don't want to get paid for something I'm not supposed to do. Yeah. And so there are certainly times where I cannot help people. There's times where I've told people it's like, okay, I won't be able to help you physically, but emotionally and spiritually, I'll definitely be able to help you. Help you be able to decrease the pain, decrease the fear, when people are making their transition. And so there's definitely people that I can't help, but I know a lot of good healers, and I will suggest it's like, go to this person or go to that person. And I do some restorative body work, but often what I'll do is I'll refer people out to other body workers because I prefer to do the energy healing. But occasionally, if it's a really serious issue, I'll put them on the table and I'll do that as well. But yeah, there's a lot of people that it's not meant for me to heal them. Somebody else can.
And I imagine, looking back, maybe even over only 4, 5, 6 years, that the term energy healing or being an intuitive coach are quite new. And there could have been times, maybe going back sort of 10 years or even sort of 15, 20, where that skepticism might have turned into you having self-doubts. And I don't know, I'm sort of trying to push you here. Now, we're seeing how much you can read me here, Joe, but have there ever been times where you've had that self-doubt thinking, is the world going to change? Are they going to be open to my ideas? I know myself, that you're new to Clubhouse, which I am myself, and I listen to you on there, and people are dropping in the room, and I don't believe 15, 20 years ago you would have seen that. Now everyone's really open to explore. So have you ever had self-doubt as a sort of an energy healer?
Oh, hell yes. There was a time back, God, when would that have been? Probably 2004 or 2005. I was crying. I was mad. I was just like, the money wasn't coming in. The clients weren't coming. And I just like, God, am I supposed to really be doing this work? And 2 in the afternoon, I just, I was crying. I went upstairs and I started taking a shower, and I'm crying in the shower. And I had left the front door open, and we had a screen porch there, and I heard somebody come onto the porch. I was like, whoa. Oh. So I hurry up and got out of the shower, and I ran down, and it was the mailman. Well, and it was a substitute, because our mailman always came at 4:30, never before 4:30. 2:15 in the afternoon, the mailman's coming. And I'm just like, well, this is interesting. So I dry off, and I go and I look at the mail, and there's a letter from a client of mine. I'm just like, well, this is weird. And I open it up, and it's a single space typewritten letter. And she says, Joe, she goes, I wasn't sure if your energy work was going to work or not. And so I put it in my calendar to see in a year if it made any difference in my life. And she said, of course, the answer to it. It's completely changed my life. She said, I'm healthier than I've ever been. And this woman was disabled. She wasn't able to work at all. And we worked, I don't know how many times, and 2 or 3 times. And she was completely back to work. She was completely fine, completely healthy. And so she said, Joe, she goes, I really want you to know how much your gift has helped me and how much your gift has saved my life, but how much better it's been for me and my husband and my kids. And, when I was up in the shower, I said, hey, God, I need a sign. And I says, I need like a billboard. I need like an email. I need something that's completely unambiguous. I need something that I can read, that I can see whether I should be doing this work or not.
He gave you that sign.
Yeah. And I've had the doubt from time to time. It's because it's hard sometimes when I'm working with certain people, and there's illnesses that I really can't help so much, or I'm trying to teach somebody or coach somebody that's a tough one. I ask, I just say, hey man, am I supposed to be doing this? And I will get the, I'll get signs, I'll get phone calls. I'll have people say, I wanted to send this thank you a long time ago. I wanted to send this, affirmation and this testimonial a long time ago. I should have sent it a long time ago, but it's finally here, and it'll show up in the email. I was like, okay. Yeah. Because right when I'm about to give up, somebody, calls and says, hey man, thank you. And
yeah. Well, and one thing that you can't do, I can say this for you, maybe you can use this in marketing, Joe, but you can't defy natural law. There's a sort of spiritual side, whatever that is for people, whether you believe in a higher power, or just spirituality. You can't defy natural law. And if someone is going to eat 30 Big Macs a day and be overweight, and their artery is going to get all clogged up, they're going to have a heart attack and die. Sort of energy wise, there's not a great deal you can do that other than changing their mindset as to how they live their lives. So there is a big transition between, you can't defy natural law, but I'm really infused by the work that you're doing, because I just see such a strong connection in the mind and in that sort of power of purpose and understanding. Do you feel that this is your one and only calling in life, Joe?
Well, there's facets to it. There's facets to it with the healing and the coaching. And, a facet that I've been developing the last 3 or 4 years is I've been really concentrating on with women and doing a lot of the sexual healing. And it's because there's been so many women that have been abused, they've been raped, they've been molested, or they've been cheated on, those kinds of things, and it's left in the body. And so I can see that. And that's one of the things that the Native Americans saw. The Native Americans, they have this word, and I cannot recall it right now, but they say that you're no longer male and you're no longer female, that you're basically a hollow bone. You're here for creator. And so I've been doing a lot of that with women, and it's been really profound. And so, but the healing stuff and the teaching, that's me. That's it. I love to do finish carpentry and work on houses and remodel houses. I love that. But I know that when I don't do the healing work, I lose myself because I'm supposed to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if you had 5 minutes with someone who is maybe a skeptic, I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to be listening to this podcast and say, "Oh, that's a load of old bollocks." Which Joe's talking about. He can't do those things. He's just on there saying this stuff. Where's the proof? But I cut your question off earlier because you were getting a bit close to me, Joe. So I can say to my listeners, yeah, he was very close. He was very close. But so there's going to be skeptics that sort of listen. But if you had to give an elevator pitch, I mean, what is it that you want people to know about alternative sort of health, about sort of your role within energy? What would you want to pitch to someone in that sort of short elevator pitch as to why should people come and see someone like you or be open to explore the idea of energy healing?
If you've tried everything else and nothing's worked, give me a call, seriously. And when I do the complimentary consultation, I'll talk with the person and basically, like you saw, I'll be able to say some personal things about them that there's no way I would know that. And so that's either going to make them comfortable, to work with me, or that'll make them, run further and faster away. But energy healing is one facet of, there's doctors and chiropractors and homeopaths and nutritionists, and, there's all kinds of different energy healing. There's sound healing. There's all kinds of incredible modalities. And one of them is going to help somebody some way eventually, probably. And so I just tell people, you don't need to believe in me. You don't need to believe in the techniques. But if you think that there's a possibility of you being able to get better, then you probably can. And so I just ask people to really trust themselves, really feel into it, and see what feels right for themselves.
Yeah, and interesting. From my own perspective, I moved to the US. I think I was 33 when I moved here, coming on to my 10th year. And in England, where there's free healthcare, nothing ever went wrong with me, Joe. Not a broken arm, broken leg. Fit as anything. I moved to the US, and I think I've had 3 or 4 quite major surgeries. But I've always been shocked after those surgeries, where the doctors always said, "So what do you want, Simon?" I'm like, well, what do you mean? To get well? No. What drugs do you want? And I've never lived in a culture where they've just said the answer is always drugs. So I think hearing you speak and just learning more, I think a lot of people are searching for just a different way, rather than just taking these sort of pills to try and cure what I've got. What is out there to do it. So it's really interesting you say that.
And that's one of the things where I come into people and I tell them, it's like, okay, no pills, no needles. And I want to add something like no shakes or no supplements, but no pills, no needles, just results. And because everybody and their mother, it's like, oh, this is going to be the cure-all for you, and it's one of those things. When I was dying, I had to research things immensely, because my body was literally like the canary in the coal mine. And so if I had the wrong type of medication, if I had the wrong type of probiotics or prebiotics, I got incredibly ill to the point where some of these things almost killed me. And so when all of these people say that, my product is the best it is, and it's got incredible doctors behind it, and it's going to save your life. And, it's like, maybe. And a lot of those are fantastic. A lot of them are incredibly fantastic, but nobody can handle everything all the time. People are allergic to chocolate, God forbid, but it's happened, people can be allergic to everything. Or they can just be resistant, or it's just not for them. It's just one of those things where you really have to trust your own intuition, and do that. And it's like, does it really feel like this? But yeah, you're correct. The pill pushing is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and if someone has listened to what you've said and it's resonating with them, and I think, well, I should actually say that Joe is down in Florida in the US. If someone wants to meet someone in person and doesn't necessarily want to do like a Zoom or internet call with you, what type of things should people go looking for in an energy healer? Is it an experience of life? Is there a certification? What would you advise someone if it's not you as to what they should look for?
Well, for starters, I have people all the time fly me around. The best one was when I was up in Minnesota. I had a client fly me down to Mexico in the middle of the winter to work with her. And I've had, a client fly me to Michigan. I've, been asked to go all over the place. And so if people desire, they can, call me up. And very often, if they can get some people, I will go there. But if that's not an option, what to look for? Um, the first thing is I mean, there's certain, I don't want to badmouth any particular types, but ask them what their results are. Ask them how many people have they been able to help permanently eliminate, because that's the catch, permanently eliminate, because that's what I do. And there are some healers that will be able to, and if they, oh yeah, I help one person, it's like, well, hold on a second, that's not really, great odds. But if they've helped numerous people permanently eliminate symptoms, if they've helped numerous people avoid surgeries, then it might be worth a try. But I would ask them, what's your results? What's your percentages? Because the percentages for me are really, really high. And I have clients all over the world that do it by phone. I mean, my clients in 2012, it was a really transformational year, but in 2012, I had a lady that drove 2.5 hours from Miami up to where I used to live. And she goes, I drove all the way from Miami and you didn't even look at me. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, me too.
I don't need to look at you. And she goes, I could have stayed home to do this. I'm like, yeah, you could have. And she goes, well, why didn't you tell me that? And so what I did is 2 weeks later, I closed the office and I've been seeing everybody, whether it's in Monaco, Australia, the United Kingdom, all over the United States. It's all by phone.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you could have saved her money as well. That could be more in your bill, Joe. You could have said to her. And one thing I'd say about you is, like I said, I want my listeners to know that I wasn't skeptical of you, but we'd never, you've energy healed numerous people in my family. I wasn't skeptical of you, but we'd never spoken. And I was sort of very deep in thoughts surrounding who is this guy and what does it mean. But when I've met you, I've been very touched with how down to earth, how normal you are, and there's no sort of hierarchy of needs, as in, I have this great sort of gifting and given to me. So I think that's definitely part of it where I sought comfort in it, and just, you're a very easygoing guy, easy to get along with. So it's been great to hear. So as we sort of start to wrap up, Joe, what is, when you look back as to key areas in your life, but particularly around the 1999 illness as to where you are today, what do you want to look back on and say, this was my great accomplishment, or this is where everything clicked for me? What would that look like to you?
When people that had passed away, when they started to come and talk for their relative that was sitting in the office or on the phone, when they would come in and they would talk in certain vernacular or use certain phrases that I would never use, when that kind of stuff started to happen, one of the best things that I ever had in my entire life, it was one of the most incredible, awesome things. A mother brought in her son. And the son was 31 years old, and he was, quote unquote, mentally handicapped. He had Down syndrome, and he never spoke a word in his life. He looked at me and he saw that I could hear. And he literally threw his mother in the chair, just shoved her in the chair, and he was going to shove me. And I said, no, I'll sit down. Yeah. And I just said it telepathy wise. And he barely made it to sitting on the couch. And Joshua, started talking, and he talked for an hour and 45 minutes, never uttering a comprehensible word out loud. But he talked about his mom, his second mom, 3 of his caregivers, and his sister, and gave me all kinds of life events and, places and clothes that they wore. And even, in his mind, he just showed me what his caregivers looked like. And one of the things that he had come to say is, he says, you got to tell my mom that I want to go home. And home for them meant home with God. Joshua had over 50 surgeries, spent over 5 years in the hospital, and he was done. He wanted to go. And so when Joshua told me about his caregivers, when I saw them at his funeral, like 9 weeks later, I knew who they were. But that was one of the most profound things. And at the end of it, Joshua said, it's like, hey, man, he says, you've helped me out. He says, now I want you to see something. And he says, you just chill and you relax. And so what he did is he let me feel his connection with God, and which was utterly, totally amazing. It was better than any meditation I've ever done. I don't do drugs. It was the highest thing I ever experienced. And he said, he looks at me and he says, now, if all I have to do is give up the ability to speak, isn't it worth it? And it was the first time I understood why God would ever make anybody mentally handicapped, because I always thought it was a burden for the kids. It was a burden for the parents. But when I saw that and I felt that, it was amazing. And the peace that it gave to the family was really cool. And so that kind of stuff, healings like with John, where it healed him physically. There was so many people that came in over the years that, they've been told that they're going to die or that they got to live with this, and they walk away, pain-free. They walk away with no illnesses. They walk away, and again, they got to check with their doctor, but they no longer need the EpiPen, or they no longer need allergy shots. That kind of stuff is huge. It's fantastic. It's just great.
Yeah, and it's just really just fantastic to hear the stories of the people that you've helped and given them either peace or given them understanding or given them health. So I guess just my final question I'll ask you then, Joe, has been, I've touched on it a couple of times about how society might have moved on in our sort of understanding of sort of energy healers and intuitive coaches. What do you think has been the shift as to why you can go on Clubhouse and, there's hundreds of people now willing to engage and learn more on this? Like I said, 20 years ago, like, now that guy's a nutter. Now it's like, I want in. I want what Joe can give. So have you tried to contextualize what's changed in society, why people are more open to finding this stuff?
I really think what it is we, in the 70s, we started to really allow ourselves to question authority. In the 70s and the 80s, and we started to allow ourselves to question authority. And when we started to allow ourselves, it started to kind of, build the momentum, and that, rolling snowball down the hill just got larger and larger. And people have looked at, big pharma and big medicine and realized that, okay, there's got to be something else. And people, when they've gotten in touch with their spirituality, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through prayer, they've been realizing within themselves that, okay, there's got to be something other than a pill or a surgery that I can do. And, and it's cool. And one of the things I tell people all the time is like, to really look at things over the years, because back in the 80s, everybody and their mother was getting carpal tunnel surgery. And then everybody and their mother was getting knee surgery. They no longer needed carpal tunnel, but they needed to have their knees replaced. And then all of a sudden it was back fusions and neck fusions. And then now everybody and their mother needs shoulder replacement. And it's like, okay, it's not like back in the 90s where if you had a Dodge Caravan, you knew that you were going to have your transmission replaced. Why is it that we go through things like that? So people have been starting to realize that there's got to be an answer other than pills and surgery. They've allowed themselves to ask the question. And when they've asked the question, that's one of the things. Einstein, when he was doing his shtick, he would literally hold a pencil, he would sit in the chair, and he'd allow himself to fall asleep with the question in his head. And when the pencil would fall out of his hand, it would wake him up and he'd have the answer. It was because he allowed himself to go into the silence. And if we go into the silence, that's when we connect with Creator. And when we connect with Creator, then we hear the answer.
Wow, powerful, Joe. And as we sort of wrap up our time here, if people want to learn more, what's the best way for them to get hold of you and some of your offerings that you have?
Okay. Profound Power Net is the website, and it's profoundpower.net. And then the phone number is 651-755-6027. Again, 651-755-6027.
Can people call you at 2:00 in the morning, Joe, whenever people give their number out? I'll put that in the show notes, but you're going to be bothered now by different calls.
That's something
if not by my listeners, I'm going to ring you at 3:00 in the morning just because you're giving your number out.
That happens all the time. And so what ends up, when I go to bed, I turn my phone off. And because, one of the things that happened, when I'm having clients from Barcelona, or Monaco call me, they're calling me at 12 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon, or or maybe they're calling me at 9 in the morning. Well, if they're calling me 9 in the morning, it's gonna be like 2 in the morning. And so I was getting phone calls at all kinds of hours, and so I've just learned to put my turn my phone off. And so, yeah, they can call me.
Well, and I distracted you, but you gave your website. We've got your number. I'll put all your details in the show notes. I know that you're on Clubhouse and you do regular sessions on there. If people are in Clubhouse, do you have a Facebook or Instagram page? What are you doing there, Joe?
Yeah, the Instagram is Profound Power Joe, and the Clubhouse is Pro Power Joe, because it has to be shorter, Pro Power Joe. And the Facebook is Joe Petroski. It's Petroski. And on LinkedIn, it's also Joe Petroski. And so, yeah, reach out to me. Oh, and if I don't get back to you, call me again, because with electronics, with the way that they are and everything, because I just found out yesterday that my email was down for 2 days and I had no clue. So if I don't get back to you, call me again.
Yeah, and I could say that Joe is a lovely, lovely guy, but getting to know him, you strike me as being of that age where you're not too technical. If I can, I don't end with an insult there, Joe, but it's been great to get to know you. So, Joe Petroski of profoundpower.net, really appreciative of your time, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, Simon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining the Who I Became podcast. To help spread this inspiring story, be sure to share it with your friends, hit the like button, and of course, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on any future episodes. We'd also love to hear how this story impacted you, so leave a comment on whatever platform you're watching us from. To learn more about this episode, our guests, or Simon, head over to the Simon Osimo /podcast and sign up to receive the latest information delivered straight to your inbox. Once again, thank you for joining us for the Who I Became podcast.